pleasure to introduce our panelists. So our first panelist is John Healey, Vice President of the World Employment Confederation. So having spent more than 30 years developing and deploying workforce solutions in labor markets throughout the world, John is a recognized thought leader and practitioner in the evolving world of work. In his role as Vice President of the World Employment Confederation, he actively advocates for labor markets that enable work, prosperity, security, and adaptation. As a futurist within the industry, he also chairs the World Employment Confederation's Blockchain Task Force, a group intent on removing friction from the process of connecting people with work. John, welcome. Okay, great. Next, I'm going to introduce Louise. So Louise Trance, am I saying that right? So Louise Trance is the partner manager at RecTec. So Louise is a recruitment industry connector and a live webcast expert, as well as an event organizer and advisor. Louise created and runs the UK Recruiter Knowledge Network, which was established back before recruitment networking even existed. Currently, she works as a partner manager at recruitment agency for RecTec. Welcome, Louise. Okay, our final panelist today is Anunay, who does keep dropping on and off. I'm going to introduce him anyway, and then I'll check back for his tech issues. Okay, so Anunay Sahay is the Senior Manager of Corporate Strategy at Quess Corp Limited. Anunay leads strategy and special projects for Quess Corp's IT staffing and search and recruitment divisions. In his role, he gets to explore the myriad of ways in which operations and technology intersect to create a more integrated, holistic experience while bringing efficiency to business. Finding ways to introduce ideas and concepts from across all industries and geographies into his work is something that he really enjoys. Okay, great. Anunay, welcome. And now it's my great pleasure to introduce our moderator for today, Ceipal's own founder and CEO, Samir Panakalapati. So Samir is a serial entrepreneur who is dedicated to advising and investing in technology startups, specifically in the HR and AI space. In the past 10 years, Samir has founded and acquired over 6 companies, including a staffing firm, SaaS platforms, and a digital marketing agency, serving thousands of customers around the world. Samir's key interests include talent acquisition, talent engagement, and total talent management. As a regular contributor of thought leadership pieces to HR publications, Samir was recently inducted into Forbes HR Councils. Okay, so at Ceipal, we're so excited to hear from such industry experts. This is going to be a great conversation. And with that, Samir, I'm going to kick it off to you.
Sheila, thank you so much. And I want to welcome all of our great panelists. One couple of things I wanted to point out. I'm going to go the clockwise, what I'm seeing in my screen from starting with Louise, Anunay, and John. And I think we have about 5 to 6 questions. Roughly, we get about 2 to 3 minutes per question per panel member. And obviously, if the topics are interesting, and feel free to add time, then we'll manage our time. With this, I think this topic is kind of super interesting to my own personal experience with the industry in the last 12 months, being in servicing to the industry and being a platform provider to. I've seen different aspects of the change that happened. So everybody understands that the topic is the talent acquisition opportunities and challenges post COVID-19. My first question start with Louise. We have seen what happened with the COVID-19 2010. And talent acquisition, talent management industry is probably the most impacted because it's all about the people. So I would love to hear from you what COVID-19 has transformed the talent acquisition and talent management industry, and both sides, positive and the negatives.
Cool. Very happy to have a go at this. So I'm going to kind of share some real overview stuff. So I know we're going to get into a load of depth in a minute. I'm probably going to steal John's and Anay's thunder here in going first. So I feel a little bit lucky to be able to do that. So I suppose the first things I'm thinking is that there's this uncertainty in the overall global economy. So that's undoubted. There is an increase in unemployment in most areas. We've got the challenges and the opportunities. So we're talking about the negatives and the positives. The challenges and the opportunities of remote work, which I hope we might get to cover a bit more later. I think the majority of staffing businesses will have seen a loss in revenue unless they're recruiting in maybe the healthcare space. And I definitely think that we've got a greater reliance on having the right technology in place. But I'd also like to talk later about how the human piece has never been more important. So that would be my kind of overview of where we're at.
Awesome. And I'm going to this, the topic to Anunay. I know Quess is the largest staffing agency in India, and you have pretty much cover coast to coast in the space. What have you seen the change of the talent acquisition, talent management in both opportunities and the challenges?
So I think part of the things that you see today is in India, it's still a maturing industry. Right? It's not yet there. It's still growing. It's in its nascent stages in some ways, where we are trying to put people and systems in place. A lot of the companies which have been here, Quess included, have grown inorganically, and they don't have systems in place to mesh everything together very well. So what you realize is when COVID did hit us, going digital in the first few days was a key challenge for, I think, all businesses. How do you make sure everyone gets onboarded offline, online instead of offline, which used to be the case before, was one of the biggest challenges we faced coming in. The other challenge we faced was with the businesses locking down, the essential industries were still operating, but with migrant workers moving all across the country, the overall labor force was was disrupted in a very difficult, you can't really put it in words in terms of how difficult it was to find people locally, because you had to make sure that they had the right kind of care. You had to make sure that they had the right kind of, coverage to be able to make to be able to come into work every day, right? So some of the blue collar workers were the worst affected. In the Quess portfolio, almost 75% of our workforce, almost 70% of our workforce is blue collared, and that was pretty much the worst affected in some ways. Our numbers prior to COVID, we were doing around 385,000 people in India, and suddenly post COVID, we're around 335,000 people, right? So that's a big chunk of people who are now back into the workforce, and they haven't yet been brought back into the active earning population of the country. So that, I think, is the biggest thing. Companies are still taking a stance where they're not sure they want to go back to work. They want to be working remote. That works great for blue collar, white collar, and somewhat in gray collar as well. But for blue collar, that's like a death knell in some ways, right? You don't know how long they can sustain. And that's where I think some of the changing rules, some of the ways we are trying to make the workspace safer, and with working with clients, is helping us become better place to position ourselves in the future, to be better prepared, right? So digital first, a focus on people and ensuring that they have coverage from a medical standpoint, from a standpoint of being able to come into work every day, is some of the bigger focus areas for us right now. Does that make sense? Hey, Samir, you're on mute. You'll have to come back. Hey, Samir, you're on mute.
So I'm not quite sure if you guys are able
Thank you.
Oh, there we go.
Thank you. So John, again, I being an industry expert and consultant and advisor, what have you seen within the US and outside the US, the impacts on talent acquisition, talent management industry?
I think, Samir, and again, first off, thank you, and thank you to the whole Ceipal team for pulling this together. I think it's always good to talk about some of the changes that are impacting people on the front lines and impacting the way that they're running the business. And candidly, I see more opportunity at this point in time than anything else. I think that the challenges that we faced as an industry came about very quickly, and the resilience that you see across the industry and the history of resilience has really stood out. So three things kind of jumped to me as the pieces that have been in focus. One is trust. The second is clarity, and the third is simplification. So trust is hitting in a variety of different areas. We're having questions about access to opportunity, clarity of what the work is that people are going to be doing. You know, if you think of the old time and materials model that the staffing industry was built on, you bought a job title for a duration of time, and then you paid based on how long someone sat in a desk in your building. And that's certainly not happening at this point. So having trust that the work is actually getting done, having clarity of what kind of work is being done. What's the outcome that I'm looking at? How do I need to think about my model a little bit differently? And then this push towards simplification, really to say, where do we just have unnecessary complexity in this process? I think there's a huge opportunity for a reset to be happening, and we're seeing many companies take that, whether you look at that in the emergence of the platform industry and some of the tech tools that have emerged into the marketplace, some adding complexity, but others just really simplifying process for people and making it more natural, making the experience as a worker and the experience as a recruiter, the experience as a hiring manager, engaging that talent a little bit easier to work through. So I'm seeing a lot of the tools from human-centric design that have been on the forefront of leading edge companies really coming into the mainstream at this point to allow this industry to really shine in the scope of services that are being made available to companies and many organizations that just simply had not used third-party labor in the past.
That's very true. Great pointers. In fact, as Anunay talked about, the challenges from the white collars to the blue collar jobs, getting back to in-person workforce to white collars more often can be done from remote. And the other important point you touched about is how do we measure their effectiveness? What are the KPIs that we need to keep track so that the remote workforce is as productive as in-person workforce? We keep hearing, hey, you know what? My team is offline, working from home. They're logging more hours. They're more productive. But I don't, I think it's very specific to very white collar specific type of jobs. But what about the larger portion of the workforce that needs to go to the work location and do it? So I'm actually just going to change the question, that topic, because it's important for us to. So I would love to ask this question about what between, let's just take this simplicity, right? White collar and blue collar jobs, and have you seen what are the best KPIs do you think have you seen in the industry to measure the effectiveness of the workforce? And I think it's going to be there post-COVID. There was some portion of the workforce is going to be a work from home anyway. But I think we as an industry is going to figure out a way to measure the performance and the effectiveness of the workforce. So, Louise, I want to ask you, what have you seen as a key performance indicators of the workforce to measure their effectiveness? If you can differentiate between white collar workforce and the blue collar workforce.
I think it's a really challenging space, and I think there's a lot of organisations getting this wrong. So I don't think I actually have the right answer to this. I think there's a few other points here, which is right now, lots of people do have to work from home. So over in the UK, you can only work from an office if you need to. If you absolutely can't work from home, other countries are in different situations. And I think part of the thing, the kind of the step back we need to take is, do we want our staff to come into the office? Is that part of the expectation? Are we going to allow them to work from home if they've got used to that? And I think you're going to end up in a situation where you'll have KPIs for some of your workforce who will be based in an office and different ones for those of them who are working from home. And that's actually a challenge in itself. One of the things I've seen, which was implemented quite a lot early on for people who are working at computers, is this kind of tracking, the keyboard tracking, the webcam having to be on all the time. And that's beyond a KPI. That's, measurement I'm very uncomfortable with, but it was indicative of how I think management had no idea where to go with this. So actually, I don't have an answer. I'd be really interested to know what John thinks. And Anunay, what do you think about this?
Anunay, I think as you said, 350,000 workforce, and majority of the workforce is the blue collar workforce. What have you at Quess have seen to assure that your clients that this workforce is productive, whomever they are allowed to work from home? Have you seen any trends or KPIs that measure?
So I think while we say it's a block of 350,000 people, it actually ends up becoming very fragmented when you think about actual clients and what they expect from the people deployed to them, right? When you think about it, again, broken down from a white collar versus blue collar standpoint, the blue collar workforce today is still actively is in the essential service group for most of the people that we deploy in the field, right? For Quess at least. So if they are active today, they are primarily people who are doing deliveries. They're people who are helping out at banks. They're people who are actively at sales positions in different shops that you might go to in the country. And when you have these people on the floor, they actually have to have an on-floor presence, and attendance is mandatory. They have an action that needs to be completed daily so if they have to make a certain number of deliveries every day, there is a track happening there because the tool is deployed there. On the white collar side, that's a little bit more difficult because where do you see white collar in India? It's primarily the IT staffing industry, and that's where you see all the tools that Louise mentioned. The ones where you track how people are engaging on their laptops, how much time are they spending actively. I was just having a conversation recently with someone at work, and we were discussing how much we've moved to Microsoft Teams as a standard application for chatting and working across the company. And we didn't realize just how much data Microsoft Teams pulls in on a daily basis of how much we are, every time we decide to take a break and go for a walk, it turns, into a different view. And that tells the system somewhere that we are away from the system, computer. It's not that I'm actively on Microsoft Teams anymore. I'm just not if I'm doing something else, it still knows that I'm active. And that's just one of the bigger companies, Microsoft, doing it. There's so many HR tech companies which are doing something so much, they're doing so much that's interesting. I've seen people who are trying to find, we have security guards on the floor. How do we track their level of satisfaction? Are they scared? Are they happy? Are they, unhappy today? We keep experimenting with these things. Like Louise says, there's no right answer at this point in time, but everyone's experimenting and doing their bit to find out what might work in a particular circumstance.
Thank you. Those are great points, Anunay. John, what's your perspective? What's your take on the KPIs of these two types of broadly classified job?
Yeah, happy to jump in, and apologies if I'm repetitive. For some reason, I'm not getting Anunay's audio. So if I repeat something there, apologies in advance. I think this is actually a really fun topic, and I think it begins whether you look at blue collar or white collar, you're going to look at the customer's attractiveness as a performance.
I think we got kind of frozen. Right? Yeah, I think.
Yeah, I lost John then as well.
Yeah.
Coming back.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Okay, good.
Okay. So I think you not to participate when companies have bad safety protocols, when companies are not allowing the flexibility necessary. We've already seen a 10-year decline in the number of women participating in the workforce. That's because they're at home taking care of their families right now. Or because the employers didn't offer the flexibility or the safety protocols that were needed. So if I look at the World Employment Confederation led an alliance task force to focus on safely back to work. And if I go into the manufacturing space, which hits a lot of your blue and brown collar areas, there are 6 different areas that there are focus points on, and there are safeguard measures within each of those 3 to 4. They range from workforce protection to employee protection to non-employee protection, business process adaptations, employer-led public health interventions, and then industry-wide safeguards. So there's a variety of different pieces that are jumping in there. And I think that's where we as an industry really need to come together. That's one of the things I take a lot of pride in being active in the World Employment Confederation, is that the industry is coming together, not to declare what I need or you need or they need, but what the workforce needs to come together to bring things in. So I think when you get into the physical environment, those KPIs are going to be much to do with safety and workers feeling comfortable going into an environment. As you get into the white collar categories, I think it's going to be more about an organization's ability to articulate what they actually want to accomplish. So I think the worker is frustrated by, just coming to work X number of hours a day, and is going to be far more interested in accomplishing things, feeling that there's purpose in the work that they're doing, feeling that they're contributing to something, and that they can measure their own level of success, that they're getting things done. And then in both cases, there's going to be an element of wellness that's going to have to be brought into it as well. So I think a lot of the tools companies have been using around employee engagement, employee experience, are going to become far more important to be measuring. And this is where, again, if I'm running a staffing organization, I want to be talking to my customer about how we're measuring that from the workforce we engage, and starting to marry that up with our customers so that we can help them understand where they fit in the marketplace. That's one of the big value points of the labor market intermediary is to say, hey, just so you know, 80% of the workers we speak to don't want to go to work at your facility because of X or Y or Z. Or 90% of the people we talk to want to work for you because you're doing these things. So access to talent is something that we as an industry have spoken about for a long time. Now is the time for the intermediaries to be capturing that information in a consistent way and really being able to tell that story to employers of why they do or don't get access to the talent. So, listen to your customer, and your customer is the worker right now. That's the commodity in greatest need, or the talent in greatest need.
John, I think you touched so many great points, especially, I think there's one point I think we all have to think about it is, create a profile persona of measuring your workforce, and then differentiating you to work with your customers, and then giving the feedback to the customers saying that why they can have access to this great talent and they can't have access to this talent. In fact, give that a positive feedback to them. They might change. What a great point. I think there's a lot can be dwell into it. It's a great point. I think it's something that I'm going to think about it too. Thank you. And we're going to talk about, we're in the talent acquisition, talent hiring industry, and the frontline folks for finding the talent, from sourcing to, having that first conversation, are the recruiters. I mean, in your perspective, I want to touch base on what are the recruiters' challenges, the post-COVID scenario, because now in the past, recruiters, you match their skills, you match their passion to the job, their likes, and stuff like that. Now you have another set of things that you need to deal with the candidates. Work from home situations. I think candidates are for sure going to bring it up. And what percentage of the time that you're going to allow, and how flexible we are, how resilient. There are a lot of things that I think that the recruiters has to deal with it. So I would like to start with Louise, and are these challenges? Are these going to be the opportunities for recruiters to differentiate and possibly give a feedback to those employers?
It's a really big question, I think. Actually, something John just said is part of what I think is the answer to this, which is this company reputation and attraction challenge. And I think that recruiters have a really big part to play in helping the companies they're working with understand the value of that. I guess there's a couple of things I thought about, and I'm just going to cover the surface of them, and maybe we might come to them more later. One is that there's a challenge in a candidate-rich market. So there's some areas where we are really, really swamped with people applying for jobs. How, as a recruitment agency, a staffing agency, do we manage that process respectfully? How do we sift and screen through what is an awful lot of people in a way which is human and which actually does pick out the right people? We need to use technology. I know that we were talking about simplifying that process, simplifying the technology, but sometimes we are going to have to use more sophisticated tools to properly assess people and be able to respond to them. And there's much more to that kind of candidate-rich market. And then there's these difficult to hire roles. So some people just are not prepared to look at the moment. They have an employer. They don't want to look anywhere else. And they're going to be thinking about whether I want an office-based role. You know, there's now this untethered talent opportunity. You know, you could work anywhere in the world. As a recruiter trying to hire a difficult to fill role, it's not actually necessarily any easier when you've got the whole world to hire from. You've got to educate your client. You've got to get your client to be clear about what they want. You've got to make the role more attractive. So I think there are quite a few challenges, but the most consultative recruiters, the ones who are most open to building those relationships, will certainly do best moving forward.
Those are great points, Louise. I think I want to touch base as a summary, but I would like to ask Anunay, in what have you seen the recruiters' challenges and opportunities?
So operationally, I think the biggest challenge is the learning curve that the recruiters have. When I say that, I mean, let's take the example of the let's take the example of the blue collar workforce again, right? Traditionally, or till early last year, if we wanted to recruit 10,000 people in a day or 1,000 people in a day, we'd hold walk-in drives all across the country. And you'd suddenly have everyone turn up and you would just interview them. You either pass or you fail and you're in. And that would be the easiest way to get people on board in a country like India, right? There's a surplus of people looking for jobs always, right? And that was by far the simplest way to go about it. Today, with the COVID situation as it is, you can't have that congregation happen anymore. So that brings about complexity. You now need to educate the people who are trying to reach you to come onto digital platforms, which they might not be familiar with. That's one way to look at it. The other side is you educate recruiters to use platforms which they weren't previously familiar with. You know, alternate channels, as we call them at Quess, where, you know, can we now go and work through put out ads for a job through a magazine, an online magazine that caters to that workforce, rather than have it go mainstream and go, you know, as a walk-in interview, you know, drive for something. That is true for the, you know, that learning curve today is some of the biggest problems that recruiters face. The other thing that I'm seeing today is primarily around the companies not being sure about how they want to operate yet. A lot of the companies today are still wondering if they want to go back to the office. They want to be working remote. They want to invest in people right away. They want to take a break and see how things settle down in the next few months. Because every few weeks you have that peak coming in, and then you have, I'm not sure about whether this is going to go away anytime soon. We have people talking about how things will change with the vaccine, but not anytime soon. The next year at least, we talk to clients today which are sure they're not going to the office for the next whole year. And then we have clients who stress they want people tomorrow in the office, right? So convincing people of one versus the other is another big challenge for us, because the workforce is scared. It needs that assurance that things will be taken care of. And working with the clients, partnering with the clients on these, on trying to get them that space where they can feel comfortable is a big part of the journey today, right? Where you are assuring them there is a way to work around the challenges. The third thing is primarily with all the companies still struggling to find their path, there's a lot of variation. Like today, I might have a job open. I might be interviewing 10 people for it. And tomorrow it's suddenly on hold and there's no idea when it might be coming back, which leaves a potential candidate with a very poor experience in some ways. I mean, they all want jobs, so they will come back to you. But now they'll think twice if you're the right fit, right? Just because you're the middleman in this conversation. I think that those 3 points kind of sum up how the recruiter experience is for me today.
Thanks, Anunay. John? Mute. John, you're on a mute.
What would a webinar be if you didn't have to tell someone to get off mute? So glad that I could offer that to everyone along the way. I think Louise and Anunay really hit the key points, and where I'd maybe offer a kind of a philosophical way to think about it for recruiters is the difference between a match and a fit. In a match, the technology and the algorithms that are out there are able to do this for us. They're able to tell us if someone has the technical competency to do the work. That part of things has really advanced significantly over the last several years, and we've gotten to that. But I think we've gotten a little lazy and expected that algorithm to give us the answer and expect something to work. Or even in the description that Anunay offered, where you bring 10,000 people in and you push them through and it's a pass-fail, and that's how decisions are made. You're getting to a stage now where fit is becoming far more important. So how do I know whether I go to bank A or bank B? Or software company A or software company B, or pharmaceutical company A or pharmaceutical company B, because their values, their ethics, their focus on safety are the things that meet me. They're going to offer the flexibility that's going to allow me not just to enjoy the work that I'm doing, but to gain the next set of skills that I'm looking for that allow me to step up in my career. Because I think one of the things we have to recognize in the staffing marketplace is most of the people we're working for are not at the end of their career. They're looking to take this assignment to gain some experience to take the next step in their career. And so to me, the biggest challenge for the recruiters right now is to be careful of letting the technology be too much of the answer, and to focus on that human element to understand how do I make sure that I provide this person access to the next opportunity. Because if I do that effectively, that's how I generate recurring business. That's how this model really grows and works in the best interest of everyone.
Those are really great pointers, John, Anunay, and Louise. I think there was somewhere I read that pre-COVID, about 20% of the workforce part of the time doing work from home, that jumped to almost 2/3 of the workforce part of the time are doing work from home. So I think it's bridging the gap between candidate and the employer by the recruiter. I think the most critical factor, basically not just this is what the hiring manager said, and I'm looking for a candidate, instead of just going to by that. The recruiters go back and say, what do you really need here, and what type of a candidate do you want? Do you really need this candidate 5 days a work week, or can they do work from home? I think really having those kind of a candid conversation with the hiring managers, with actually the candidates, and through a bridge between these two, I think it's going to be the critical part, and who does well, I think, will be a more successful recruiters in the market. So thank you. I think those are great pointers too. And I know Sheila is looking at it. Sheila?
Okay, so we're at our 10-minute mark. Samir, if you just want to invite people to give final comments, we've had an engaged Q&A, so I want to make sure we get time for some questions. So last remarks from our panelists, and then pass it over to me for Q&A.
Okay, that's great. I know this topic is it is a great way to do it. I know we talk about it, and I think I wanted to talk about one quick comment. Ask you. This event, the key theme was diversity, equity, and inclusion in the workforce. Now we have the workforce, that's part of the workforce is working from home. Part of the workforce have a choice to choose between which employers to go where. So how is the diversity, equity, and inclusion? How do we build a true diversified workforce with these existing challenges? I think these challenges are going to stay as work from home, going to be the mainstream post-COVID. Louise, what's your thought process? How do we build a great diversity workforce while addressing these challenges?
So I know that we're tough on time, so I'll be really brief, but I do think there's some really significant challenges here. There was a McKinsey report which was showing a really horrific negative impact on diversity and inclusion in in the majority white countries where people of colour are especially worried about their workplace situation, women disproportionately affected. And I know that people who work remotely, people who have neurodiverse issues are going to find some of those circumstances much tougher. So I think there's lots and lots of issues here. It's a massive topic. I think that as recruiters, we have a really strong opportunity here to work again with our clients, to support them, to get them on the right track, to get the recruitment strategy correctly in place. It's just, we don't have enough time now to talk about what that might be, but I definitely think that if it's not top of your agenda as a recruiter, then you are really missing out on a way to differentiate yourself, but you're doing everyone a disservice.
Awesome. Anunay, do you
Yeah, so I think the future is experiential, right? Everything that we want to do is all about the experience. And with the opportunity to work from home or having flexibility of, having part of the week at work and part of the week at home, should enable, in theory, the opportunity for people to have better working hours, have better work-life balance in some ways. And I think that's where we should drive the conversation. That might improve the D&I situation.
Okay.
D&I.
John?
I'd add into I think that it maybe adds to what Louise shared a little bit, in that specialization has become a focus of the recruitment industry over the last several years. And whether you choose to now go focus on helping moms gain access to work, there's a company called the Mom Project exclusively focused on that. Or you focus on the neurodiverse community because you know that that's a population that is being under-leveraged in the marketplace. Kelly has a program called Discover that focuses exclusively in that area. Organizations are going to differentiate by the community that they build to create unique forms of value for different clusters of the workforce. That's how you're going to capitalize on the opportunity as a recruitment business owner, but also in providing services to your customer by being able to bring access to talent pools that they can't get on their own. So the analogy I would give everyone to just kind of think about is, think of all your top sports athletes or your movie stars that you love, whether it's in Hollywood or Bollywood. They all have agents. These are the highest paid people in the world, and they all have an agent to help them make sure that they get the right opportunity, not just a opportunity. And if for all the people who think that the recruitment industry is going to go away, lean back to that and recognize that if you truly provide unique value to a defined community of people, then you provide a service that will be in tremendous demand inside the marketplace. So to me, that would be the piece that I would really push towards for everyone to think about.
Great.
Thank you, John. Okay, go ahead, Sheila.
Okay, great. So we have 5 minutes. I really do want to make sure that we get to some questions just because we hadn't engaged Q&A. So forgive me if these are repetitive. And then the other note is we are going to end at 11:15 sharp. So let's just all be aware of that as we answer the questions. So the first question is, and John, I saw that you answered this a bit in the chat, so maybe you can take up on it. So vaccines in the workplace, how do employers handle it? How do employees handle it? What's the game plan going forward? And I know we touched on this a bit throughout the chat, but maybe just a concentrated answer.
I'll go real quick. Think blockchain, folks. We will all have a digital wallet. It's going to be released. It's been put out by Velocity Network Foundation. By the end of 2021, there will be a digital wallet that will contain things, whether it's your eligibility to work, validation of your identity, validation of credentials and certifications. And one of those things is going to be contact tracing. Another one is going to be tied to your vaccines. History. So expect that to be coming up and be thinking about how that fits into your recruitment strategy.
Great. Yeah, that's a big one. Okay, so another question is, how should companies ensure that the workforce is safely transitioned to in-person work? Lots of tech companies are still doing remote work. Do we foresee them transitioning back? And what are some actionable safety measures that we should be taking? So that's for anyone who wants to go. Anunay, Louise, maybe Anunay, since you were talking about blue collar workers and people who have to work anyway, how would you recommend, like, what are the actionable tips for safety?
So, the core is, at the end of the day, wear a mask, maintain social distancing, wear protective gear where possible, right? That's what we're trying to do with all our workforce. They have to be able to, we have ways to track using our ESS app, whether they are wearing their required gear or not. And that, I think, is core, because it's our responsibility as individuals to be to be safe first and foremost. As a client, the clients are taking steps. They'll have fumigation happening. They will have repetitive cleaning happening. They are trying to make it as safe as possible. They are trying to control the number of people in the offices. And I think that is going to make some of this easier in the long run. I don't know how it will change in the next few months with the vaccines, but that's where we are at today.
It's an interesting point. It's a movable feast, isn't it? Is that what we're doing today is different than what we hopefully will have to do in 6 months' time? And I think that having that flexibility as an employer is really important. So maybe bringing people back who don't normally work shifts on a shift-based system is something I've seen in the UK.
Yeah, that's a great point. Just being flexible and understanding what you can do and what parameters. That's a really good example about the shifts. Okay, good. So we have Samir, go ahead.
One quick thing is we still see a lot of tech companies and office jobs are going, large percentage of them are continuing to work from home. And I think it's going to stay. We don't know what percentage. It's only time will tell.
Yeah, that's what we've been hearing for such a long time. Only time will tell. But hopefully this COVID-19, we're all staying safe. We only have 1 minute left and I don't want to rush an answer. So to all of our attendees, thank you so much for coming. If you have other questions, please feel free to reach out to Ceipal and we'll try to get you the best answer. To all of our panelists, Anunay, John, Louise, thank you so much for joining. Great conversation. Samir, thank you for moderating. Go to our agenda tab, check out our other sessions, and thank you so much. Bye, everybody.
Take care.